right. Usually we just wait a few minutes here and wait for people to kind of file in. You know how it goes. You know how webinars are. And then we normally just small talk here while we get going.
Deal. Can we talk about your shirt again? No, I'm kidding.
Oh yeah. I picked up it's just rowing blazers. I love this brand. They're really interesting with how they do like partnerships and like how they do partnerships and like collaborations is very interesting to me, right? Because we're like, we live in a world where people are always talking about collaborations. I see so many brand collaborations that like sometimes don't make sense or are like really interesting, right? Like especially D2C brands. And Rowing Blazers collaboration with literally anyone is like kind of cool and interesting. It's like, well, if it fits the vibe and it fits what we're looking for, and
Right.
loosely, I think if it makes strategic sense, they just go for it. It's great. There's cool articles out there about it. It always cracks me up when I see like a hot sauce brand and, you know, a shoe company collaborating, and I'm like, that's cool on paper. Does it work? I mean, I don't know, because it's usually like collaborations with brands that I don't know. And you know, the details of that and how it works, it's worth talking about, right? Another webinar, another day. Let's see. All right, we got 45 people here. I'm gonna go ahead and kick this thing off. We're a couple minutes after here. Welcome everybody to our weekly media buyer webinar. My name is Brian. I am your host here this week and every week. With me today, I have Nehal Kazim, the founder of AdPros. He's going to be running through some really exciting stuff for us later. In this webinar, we cover tips, tricks, findings, everything that we've been able to uncover in the world of media buying. You know, we're getting things that you're sending to us. You hear something in DMs, send it to me. I'm seeing things across clients, founders I'm talking to, everybody from big enterprise companies all the way down, right? To solo founders. So I'm going to run through the raw numbers, do a quick summary, and give you some quick takeaways of what's going on. We're still talking a lot about last Sunday's meta meltdown, as we're phrasing it, coining it, right? In reality, the budget by platform split hasn't changed too dramatically. We are seeing double-digit moves away from YouTube, which is pretty surprising, back onto TikTok. Week over week, it's always stunning to me to see these big changes, because that tells me that people are really fumbling around and pulling the switches, right? And they're like, we're gaming, right? We're trying to find a little bit of something. Meta stays within, you know, under 5. Whenever I look at this, I go, okay, if Meta didn't change more than 5%, that's not a huge drastic shock for me. What is surprising is that in the wake of last week's, you know, meltdown, whatever you want to call it, the metalocalypse, whatever you want to call it, that people haven't really shifted their budgets. We kind of know that Facebook is where we need to put our money if we want to get direct response. And that hasn't changed. I mean, the advice we've been giving, keep spending. Like maybe you do have to restart your platform or restart all of your campaigns, or like start from scratch, especially in the sense of the experiments you've been designing, because you're not seeing the same performance you had from before. But at the end of the day, Meta is what's driving that bottom of funnel conversions, right? We're still seeing across auction and conversion metrics, like we're still seeing a huge ton of it's just a tough time, right? Even in the wake of, okay, everything's back on, people turn their stuff back on, the amount of campaigns that got paused, that got blocked. I mean, if you tried to go in and shut off a bunch of campaigns, they're you know, banning you from your account, they're locking you out. This stuff is affecting everyone, and it still does. You know, I don't have the answers for this is exactly what you should do to immediately fix your Meta account, because it's something that is case by case, because every single account was designed differently, overspent differently. We do know that people are going to be doing, or Meta is going to be doing reimbursements. What we heard, which you could go and read the details about this in last week's newsletter, what we heard is that you don't even have to file a complaint. They're just going to give you reimbursement. My problem with that is, without discussing what that reimbursement is going to be, it's unclear if you're going to actually get what you feel like you deserve, or what, right? It's like getting an insurance claim filed and they're like, we just think it's worth this, and you're good, right? So If you have a Meta rep, you should stay in conversation with them, figure out what's going on, figure out when those payments are going to come. What I'm hearing is that they're going to come over the next couple of weeks. There's going to be no rhyme or reason to how they get delivered. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, which was my dad's favorite saying ever, which basically means keep complaining until they fix it. You know, I'm not saying anything bad about Meta. They're doing their best to maintain and control and mitigate this situation. But for you, if you don't want to fall through the cracks with your brand, regardless of how big or small that you are, just stay in contact with them, right? So you can see they've had a tough time performance. It's been a really tough April, I think, for everybody across the spectrum here, in terms of size and budget. By industry, what I like to see is spring continues to have sprung, which I've been saying for a couple of weeks now. Home goods definitely continuing to catch up. We're starting to see apparel, fashion, and accessories start to slow down. But people are like flipping their homes right now, right? Like we're coming out of winter. You're buying new clothes for yourself, for your children. Baby's been on a hot run here for a couple of weeks, like where they've been increasing their income and daily revenue and new customers pretty consistently. Beauty is back up. Summer is on the way. This is a great angle for you to be hitting in all of your ads, kind of regardless of what you sell, right? So that's kind of where we've been at. In my mind, April is one of these in-between months where we always struggle. This is a long tweet. Everyone should just go and follow David Herman on Twitter. You know, he's a big part of what we do here at Northbeam, and he has fantastic insight on what's going on. Just because of the sheer volume of budget that he sits over every month and spends on Facebook. He was on last week's webinar, and his Twitter is like fantastic insight, just what he's seeing, right? And usually I take a lot of what he's seeing, what we're seeing across our other brands, and try and make something that speaks to everyone. David Herman is, he hates it when I say this, but David Herman is probably one of the best media buyers to ever do it, ever. He's one of the OGs. He's been around for a really long time in this business, been selling lots and lots and lots and lots of Facebook ads. So go check him out. April is one of those in-between months where I really think, because we're out of one discount season, you know, we don't have too many like tent poles for campaigns to run in April and in May, right? There's Mother's Day is coming in May, which is good. That makes it a tougher month usually for people, especially people who are dependent on discounts and stuff like that. So in my mind, a tough April, I mean, is going to lead to better success moving forward, because it can't be bad forever, right? We had major issues with CPMs. We've had issues with Advantage Plus campaigns. Even though they've been performing for some people, they've been causing problems for others. As we start to move into the summer and people's shifting buying habits start to change and budgets start to align with that and creative starts to align with that, I do think people are going to see a natural lift, right? We have Father's Day on the way. We have Mother's Day, 4th of July, like a handful of tent poles that we'll be able to attach discount things to for those of you who are doing that. And then also we're going to move into a totally different type of seasonality that's going to be great for people. We're out of the kind of Q1 seasonality rush of health, wellness, et cetera, et cetera. So if you didn't have the best April, you're fully not alone. That's the bottom line here. And keep an eye on these media buyer webinars. Keep an eye on the data that we have here. You can try and understand where's my baseline at, what's happening, right? There's been pretty intense other algorithmic shifts this month. TikTok, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, crazy shifting numbers on Facebook. I'm going to have a whole big breakdown of this on our blog later, the full download if you didn't see the media buyer newsletter from yesterday. And you're not alone. Join us on Twitter. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about what happened in your business and see if we can make some rhyme or reason out of it. So that's it for me. I want to pass it over to Nehal today. I want to introduce Nehal. He is the founder of Ad Pros. Huge fan of Northbeam. We're a huge fan of him. Nehal has put together a pretty compelling way of reporting on and setting benchmarks across your performance media account, whether it's at an all the way down to an offer level, right? Whether it's offer, you know, campaign, even account. And we brought him on the show today to share that and talk a little bit about that. So Nehal, thanks for joining us today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and you can go ahead and take over.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. And do you want me to jump right into it?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Tell us what are you showing us today?
Yep.
How did you develop this, and what are people going to get out of it if they hang out with us here for the next 20-30 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. So when iOS 14 like kicked all of our butts for the most part, we were trying to make sense of life. And that is actually when I got introduced to Northbeam by Miracle, who was actually on the call or listening in today as well. And so I got introduced to Northbeam. And as I was going through that, I had to figure out what are we going to do to figure out like how are we going to actually scale? Because all of our campaigns were slowly going downhill when the changes started happening for iOS. And we were stuck, and it was a really big challenge because we were breaking records. Everything was doing really good. And then things stopped working. And we weren't able to reconcile what's happening in Facebook or Google or any ad platform and what's happening in real life. And first party data wasn't really a topic for every brand because that wasn't really necessary. We trusted data enough. And so that's where I started using Northbeam. And then once we started using Northbeam, and especially with bigger budgets of spending over $1 million a month per brand, that's when we had to make sense of like, how do we do this across multiple channels? And how do we make decisions that allow us not only to add more spend, but do it profitably and do it with confidence? That's what Northbeam really helped us with.
Amazing. Then let's get into it. Show us what you're doing.
Yeah, let's do it. So the process that I'm going to show you guys came out of like a lot of pain because I made a decision when we solve iOS and like the changes around iOS, I'm going to push as hard as we possibly can for our clients. Right now, we manage about $5 million a month in spend over a handful of clients. And that is because of this process around benchmarking. And so the process I'm going to show you helps us scale. It allows us to do omni-channel scaling. So if you're on 4 to 7 ad platforms, like the distribution you shared, Brian, like it's very common when that happens, in terms of Facebook being the primary, but we're trying to diversify out of Facebook. And how do we de-risk out of Facebook? And so we have to go beyond Facebook and Google, YouTube. So that helps with that process. It helps with miscommunication of targets with teams because what we've seen is like there's usually a leadership team, someone who's owning marketing and growth, and then the media buyer, and then sometimes the creative teams really being involved. And so how do you streamline that communication when it comes with benchmarking, scaling objectively based off of benchmarks, logic, and confidence? Once this happens, like it changes the energy of the team because we're not thinking, well, there's this caveat and that caveat. It's like, no, right now, this quarter, we decided these are the benchmarks and that's what the way it's going to be until further notice. And so that really helps with certainty. And because of that, we were able to increase the profitability of a furniture brand, eight-figure furniture brand by 20%. We're able to help with scaling a brand to 2.6 million a month in spend this year because of the benchmarking. And then one of the biggest brands that we've worked with, we were able to go from 3.5 million a month in spend to 7 million a month in about a 90-day period and decrease first-time CPA. And that was because there's like a clear path before Northbeam and after Northbeam. And that was like because of that. So I'm a huge Northbeam fanboy, as you can see. So before Northbeam, the problem was like we weren't able to, like ad platforms have over 100% attribution because Facebook takes attribution, Google takes attribution. If you add the conversions up, it's more than 100%. So that was a problem. We didn't know the difference. We didn't know the difference between like ad platform metrics versus real. We didn't have accrual method. It was all cash everywhere. So we couldn't separate the difference. We're optimizing for the wrong benchmarks because of that. And then we didn't know when we were truly winning or losing. It was more hunch based. And it's like, that's tricky when you're talking about millions a month in spend. We didn't know what organic lift was, and it was hard to analyze per offer or per funnel. And then I'm mentioning miscommunication again, because even when things are good, like there's still like friction of like, are we really doing as good as we think we are, or are we not? Like, how do we know? And that process is ongoing, but having more confidence there definitely helps. So what I'm going to go through are 5 stages of benchmarking, and there's types of benchmarks. There's a benchmark of what is happening in your business right now versus what are your target benchmarks. The target benchmarks is a different presentation. It's a different conversation. For everyone who's using Northbeam right now, you can go through this presentation. We're going to give you guys like template as well, a Google Sheet, and we're going to give you an SOP of a standard operating procedure of exactly how to get these benchmarks. So there's no like confusion or no gaps in how to do this analysis. And so where the purpose of this presentation is just so how do you take the numbers inside of Northbeam right now and see where you're at? And I'll show you why that's important in the lens that we're going through with the 5 stages. So the first level is just business-wide. What is your media efficiency ratio and what is the target of that? Most businesses have a target of how profitable that they want to be business-wide. That's like pretty rudimentary. Then the next level is how profitable do you want to be across all of your acquisition, all new customers? And so that is the AMER, right? And so when it comes to your targets, those should be different. A lot of brands confuse that. And then that's like the start of the miscommunication, and we're at level 2. After that, there are benchmarks for new customer acquisition where there's cash and accrual. And so most media buyers, most advertising goes towards what is happening on cash. Because you guys are Northbeam customers, you have both views, and I'm going to show you how to set benchmarks for both. So that is the third level of across all acquisition. What is your target on cash versus accrual? Then level 4 is what is your cash versus your cash per channel. And so this is the place that most media buyers are relatively confident of, like, cool, here's what my end of day ROAS normally is. And I know the variability around that. I feel good about life, or I hate my life. Kind of, it's very clear. The challenge is what happens on accrual. And this is the purpose of the conversation today of how do you set your day 1 benchmarks for your business, for your offers, for your funnels, anything that you're running. And instead, the how to set them or what they should be, that's different. But today we're going to go through what are they right now, objectively. Anything you want to add to that, Brian?
No, I mean, that's always the challenge, right? It's so often the benchmarks, the goals that I see set are pulled out of nowhere, or it's like they're pulled out of nowhere. They're pulled out of what they hear, the C-suite says, oh, I hear my buddy's doing this, right? And I'm like, well, your buddy saw something totally different than we do, right? So like, I like that this is based on what we're doing today, because so much of what we push in Northbeam is like, look at your numbers, focus on today and tomorrow. And if you're constantly seeing improvement, it's like being at the gym, right? Like you see a little bit of improvement every single time, you're moving upwards. So I'm excited for this, not only as a framework, but as a mindset, like what you alluded to in the beginning, being like, this makes people more excited and engaged because they know what exactly they're trying to achieve, which is so liberating. It's so liberating. So keep going. This is great.
And as a leader of a company, you want to create games that are winnable for your team. And as a media buyer or a person who's leading the marketing team or growth team, you want to be able to design games and win the games with your team. And if you're not able to win them, or you don't believe it's possible, it's hard to coach them, it's hard to measure, it's hard to see if you're winning or losing any day. And so this solves that whole process. And so these are the 5 stages of benchmarking of like what's happening business-wide, what's happening from a first-time customer AMER standpoint. Then for your new customers, what's happening on cash versus accrual? What are your targets on cash? What are your targets on accrual? So if this feels like a lot right now, we're going to go through exactly how to do this and how to make sense of all of this. So before I do that, I will add that there is a caveat to the levels of complexity because every business obviously is not the same. And these are the levels. So if you are across multiple countries, that might be affecting that. There are implications of that when it comes to currencies or CPMs or conversion rates. It does change a lot. So there's that. There are different offers. We have a client right now. They have an offer where it's a free plus shipping offer. It's like $8 average order value. There's another offer that is like sub 100 and another offer that's above 100. And so for those targets, there are very different financial models for each one of those offers. And so if you just have one offer or one benchmark for your whole business, and then you shift ad spend, it's not objectively correct. So there is level of complexity there. And then if you're doing direct to a PDP, or if you're going through an advertorial, or if you're doing a quiz funnel, then that changes your metrics as well. If you're a subscription company, there's payback periods. There's different types of campaign like lead generation, promotions, or product launch. Those are outliers, but they do exist. And then especially if you have a retail part of your business or Amazon, there are rollover or overall lifts that happen based off of how much you're spending. And so that's why I wanted to have the 5 as the foundation. And then here's different complexity based off of your specific business. And based off of that, there's a series of metrics to look at. So we're not going to go into this today. I just wanted to share this with you guys so you can work on this with your team. That's why we're going to provide all this presentation and the recording so you can go through it as slowly or quickly as you want. So to say that there's just going to be one benchmark for your business, I think is dangerous from a business strategy standpoint, because it's way more complex than that. And for me to oversimplify it would actually be hurting day-to-day operation and like using Northbeam. So want to put a caveat there. Okay, so back to basics. So 5 stages of benchmarking. And so where we're going to start is, where are you now? And so this is the template that we're going to give you guys, which is the attribution map. What happens with this template is that you will be able to see what are your day 1 benchmarks. What are your day 1 benchmarks business-wide? What are your day 1 benchmarks on first-time customers? And then what are your benchmarks per platform? The level on top of this is, if you have multiple offers, you can do this process again, but this is just to start and create momentum for your benchmarks so that you can make decisions. After this, once you implement this process, you'll also have a benchmark for what is your delayed attribution on first-time customers overall. What is your overall organic lift in your business? So you can separate anything that's ad-related and then separate anything that's organic. And that can mean email, SMS, direct, cross-device, anything else. So you can separate those to see what's getting attributed to individual channels. This also will help communication and expectation, as I mentioned, and then you can do the offer-based part. So this is what the attribution map looks like. We're going to send you the Google Sheet here as well shortly. And so let me just walk through this. So if you look at this part, you'll see there is a day 1 first-time ROAS benchmark. And so what that means is that if you look at all ad channels, you'll be able to see what is my day 1 benchmark, like the day that I spent, right? And for me, it took a pretty long time to really wrap my head around accrual. Like, I think for anyone who's in the finance space, like, they understand accounting and like in terms of cash and accrual. I understand that too, but I didn't know how to use it. If I don't know how to use it, therefore I don't understand it. So it took me a long time to like really figure out how to use it day to day. That helps our decision making. So that's what I'm going to accelerate for you guys. So what is the day 1 target for all ad accounts? Then what is the delayed attribution for all of your ad account, like ad platforms? We choose a 90-day period just so that it's not overly extended. Of course, if you're using Northbeam for years now, you'll have amazing data on LTVs. But even if you're a new Northbeam user, 90 days is a good benchmark to start with as the initial delayed attribution target. Then there is the overall organic lift. And so that is what the anything that's not the ad platform. So in this example, it's 55% ROAS on day 1, 75% with fully attributed across all ad platforms, and then 25% organic lift, which includes email, SMS, direct, anything else that you have running. And you can see the delayed attribution there. And then once you have that business-wide, then you go into, what are my targets from an accrual standpoint per channel? And then what are my targets on a cash basis? So before I go further, anything you want to add, Brian?
No, I mean, I think the accrual understanding is something that we stress a lot across our Northbeam clients. And I mean, that's why we offer that split, right? But I think there's not enough people who understand how it can work for them. So I'm realizing we're not just setting benchmarks here. We're really talking about, this is what you can see in Northbeam that you can't do with anything else, which of course I'm like happy about, right? But I mean, this is why we made it that way, so that you can do this type of work.
Absolutely. And what we've seen is that it's so complicated because there's so many numbers and so many benchmarks and offers and funnels and avatars. Like, how do you make sense of it? And so that's why I needed something to like sleep well at night. And so this is what we came up with over time. And so again, what we're doing is we're separating these benchmarks on business wide, and then we're separating them on channel specific. And so I don't think we're going to have enough time to go through this. We're going to send you this process, but I'll just give a quick overview of what this looks like. When you're looking at your past performance, what you're going to do is you're going to go through you're going to go to the sales tab. You're going to look at last 90 days. We give you the settings so that you can look at that data. Once you do that, we're going to give you the sheet so you can fill in the data exactly step by step in this process of what is your business-wide ROAS that you're actually going for across new customers. Then how does it work for specific ad platforms? And then how do you actually break that down on a day one and lifetime value over a 90-day period? If you want to do 6 months, you can do that, or 1 year or multiple years, up to you. So you're going to get access to this. And we're going to help you set these benchmarks on the accrual basis. So you'll have this as well, and on the cash basis. So let me just show you very quickly. And Brian, I'm not sure if you can help me post these links so everyone has them.
Of course.
I will post them here.
We'll also follow via email. So everybody who's seeing the recording of this, check your email and we'll put it in the bio as well.
Awesome. And so what happens is that when you set up these benchmarks, when you're actually media buying day to day, what you'll be able to see is, all right, I want a 78%. This is just an example. So if the number is 78%, I want a 78% ROAS business wide. What that means for me is I need a 57% ROAS on day one across all paid channels. And I know that I want 43% on Facebook. I want 125% on Google, all the way down. And so we can set these specific benchmarks and then look at objectively every single day, are we on track, yes or no, and be able to make a decision if we need to make adjustments, basically. And so you guys should be able to, cool. I guess we're just going to send it in the follow-up. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah. We can send the follow-up and it'll have this guide in it and people can look at that. So
Awesome.
Don't be worried about trying to write down. If you're here now, don't be worried trying to write down step-by-steps. We'll send that to everyone.
Yeah, it's completely unnecessary. We have the whole process documented for you guys, so you'll get this after the call. And again, the goal is, this is what we want to accomplish. What do we want? How successful are we today? What's delayed attribution? What's organic lift? How do we improve communication? And then go per channel. So, and if you guys are going through this and you need feedback, feel free to reach out.
That was fantastic. I want to take a couple minutes here and just run over. I know we'll lose some people here at the top of the hour, but I want to take a couple minutes and talk about, like, in your experience, what you've been doing with these, right? So if we're looking at these benchmarks and, you know, let's say, we're missing it on a certain channel, right? Like, can you talk me through some examples of adjustments and decisions you've been able to make now that you've seen this? Does this open the door to, I know exactly what I need to do, right? Or is it more of like, it helps you identify issues that you may have on specific channels that warrant further investigation? Or does this tell you I need to pull this lever, pull that lever? Like, how do you use this to problem solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So the goal is, how can we decrease our first time CPA, like for new customers, or increase the profitability of that new customer? And the reason we're doing that is so we can scale, right? So when you're looking at the decision making, like when we're looking at the decision making, the biggest example of this was how we're going through the process with the 3.5 million a month. Just Facebook at that time was 1.5 million. And so we started launching UGC creatives compared to their like very highly produced creative. In platform, it was marginally different. It wasn't really that big, but we could see in Northbeam on the click what the impact was. And so we started directing more spend just on that creative because we couldn't verify it. So we had to create our own hierarchy of our metrics. So for us, Northbeam is number one. Then we look at ad platforms. And then after that, if we need to, we go to Google Analytics. But that's like our hierarchy. And so when we were looking to make those decisions, now we know what our day one target for this $110 average order value was. And at that point, now we were able to change the creative. Then when we were doing different funnel optimizations, we knew what our best performing funnel was as a control. We launched a series of additional funnels, and we were able to like turn off all additional tests pretty quickly. Even though we gave it a significant amount of budget, that is just not working because we know what our accrual day one targets are. And so it doesn't matter what the delayed attribution is. The delayed attribution will not save how poorly this is doing on day one. It's just not going to happen. And so, and for this example specifically, like a lot of brands are stuck inside of Google, like Meta and Google and YouTube. Like it represents anywhere between 80 to 90% of spend. And it's very oppressive, I think. And so in order to get out of that, we've been trying to expand it into additional channels. And every time we were able to do that, we're able to look at it across the same, targets. Even if we're doing TikTok or we're doing native ads or any additional platform, we're able to see objectively on accrual, this is our target. Are we hitting it? Yes or no? Great. There are adjustments on TikTok because there's more delayed attribution because we're seeing lift on organic search and Google. We can see the paths that are actually happening in Northbeam. That's great. But we can set those benchmarks on day one, and we know if we're hitting it. And we don't have to wait for 7 days delayed attribution or YouTube for like 30 days to really see it in platform. Obviously, like all the Northbeam users know that, but the hard part is everyone's just looking at cash. And so it has to be to accrual, and we prefer clicks only. That's the one that we feel most confident in.
You and our team as well, like everyone loves clicks only. And if you don't trust the ad creative you're making, it seems it's like to do one day is intense. But everyone that I know, like you and so many people who are succeeding at this work, are very focused on that one day click, new customer acquisition, right? Is this sort of process flexible? I mean, you're talking about doing multiple millions a month in spend, right? Is this sort of process flexible for budgets all up and down the range? Like, when do you turn this on? Like, is there I know it's a way of measuring like, oh, we're going to see this type of performance, but in the sense of running experiments, is there a minimum in your world and your understanding of spend that works for this sort of thing?
From my standpoint, if you're spending like any money, you need a benchmark. You need a baseline of how things are going. And so this is meant to be objective reflection of what is happening in platform versus in Northbeam. And so once you're able to make those, now you're able to improve your decision making, whether you're spending $1,000 a day or 50,000, 100,000 a day. And so, this is foundational work. And the hard part about foundational work inside of Northbeam, it's like the CEO of a direct-to-consumer brand is not going to coach the media buyer on how to set benchmarks. They're just going to say, here is what my expectation from a business growth standpoint looks like on profitability business-wide. Here's what we need our CPA to be on a first-time customer as a percentage of total spend and distribution between first-time customers and returning customers. Here's overall like payback periods that I might need on that per geo or per offer or per SKU kind of thing. And you guys figure it out. That's why we're paying you. And so that's the situation that we've been in, because like we have to level up on our decision making and how we set the benchmarks so that it aligns with business-wide objectives, not the other way around.
And that to me is the key of it. Because if you want to succeed in this sort of work where you're like, I want to put this money on these platforms and I want to see return on that investment, you have to go that way. You can't force it the other direction, right? And so for me, the value that I see is that you can come across the whole team. I mean, the amount of conversations I've had with people in ops or people in inventory where they just fully don't understand what we're doing over on our side. You have the ability to say, this is how we communicate on whether or not we're winning or not. And the decisions that we have to make, whether it's going with another 3PL, whether it's changing the entire channels we're running, whether it's brand new creative, whether it's this experiment, that experiment, it just gives you a common language. And so many people who are trying to move out of 5 to 10 employees or even solopreneurs up to like 30, 40, you reach a point where everyone's business objectives are totally different. And because everyone's trying to do their own separate jobs. So So the value of this I see is just, and of course it gets everyone looking at Northbeam, right?
Yeah.
And yeah.
And then the hard part is like if the finance team and leadership team are basically speaking English, but media buying team is speaking Spanish, like that's what happens when the languages are different on what targets are, or they're, the finance team or leadership team doesn't really care about 1-day click or 7-day click, or they're not looking at view throughs, like they don't care. They just need objective metrics so that everyone is speaking the same language and looking at the same targets. And so when it comes to business wide, here's the level of profit we need on our new customer acquisition today. Here's our expected delayed attribution over a period of time. We know our LTV across the business, and that kind of goes beyond the scope of this. And then overall, there's an organic lift that happens across all advertising for our business, for all new customers. And then when there are problems, because there's going to be challenges, that's the whole point, especially when you're scaling, then you can have a conversation about which benchmark should we adjust. And this is something that's happening actually for one of our clients right now, where we're hitting ROAS metrics, we're hitting scaling numbers in terms of volume, except the payback periods aren't working. And so now we are reassessing the 2 core offers and if those are actually with the right assumptions. And that's why I put all of these different considerations, because it's not as simple as like, oh, we have an AMER target or here's our cash target, because for this brand, there's a very significant difference between 2 offers that we have, and those 2 offers dictate the profitability of every dollar invested. And now multiply that by $3 million a month right now for them approximately, it creates a lot of pressure. So we have to make these decisions consciously and then like see if they actually back out.
Nehal, this is fantastic stuff. We are coming up at almost 10 after here. We still have a bunch of people hanging out with us today. If you have any questions, anybody in the audience has any questions, now's the time to send them. While they're typing those, Nehal, can you show us how to get a hold of you to talk about this? Can you show us that last slide?
Absolutely. So once you guys get access to the sheet, feel free to reach out at nehal@appros.com. Especially with some of these benchmarking, once you go through this process, you're going to have a bunch of questions, and there's a lot of considerations. You just have to choose the first level of benchmark and see it through. And what you're going to be able to do is once you set the benchmark, you're like, do I agree with this? Let's watch it for a week and we'll see, is the first time acquisition benchmark on accrual correct or not? No? Okay, let's adjust it. And or like what the variability is. We have to do this process over and over and over again. It's the same thing like when we're figuring out testing processes for an ad platform, we go through multiple variations of that. When one of the cases for the big client that I was mentioning, we went through 5-6 different testing methods. And so same thing for benchmarking. We've gone through multiple benchmarks to decide on what is the benchmark that we actually want. And it takes time.
Yeah, it takes time. But I mean, if people have Northbeam, they can actually pull this off, which is my like mandatory plug, right? But I mean, this is what we made the tool for. It's experimenting faster, getting people aligned on this is the core data that we use here, and this is the data that everyone's referencing, and making data that's more accurate than what they had access to before. It allows you to have that hierarchy of like, this is what data we look at, this is what we trust, and this is how we make decisions. And I'm going to throw this one on another pile of every single time I talk to so many people, and I'm like, what's different about Northbeam that help you succeed? And so often they go, we just trust it. We run our experiments like we run responsible, effective experimentations with responsible, effective benchmarks, exactly as you shared here. And it works. I mean, I wish I could tell people that it is more complicated, but it's truly not. It's just the modern era of media buying requires you to be really diligent about this work. I think back in the day, we used to just throw some money on Facebook and it works, right? But if you want to scale with a capital S, like this is what it takes, right? Nehal, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, this is where
go ahead. You were gonna say.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Like this is work. This is if you're spending enough money to invest in Northbeam, like you must be willing to do stuff like this in order to maximize a platform like Northbeam. It will make your team a lot happier and it will create a lot of sanity and like certainty in the business. And that's why we've set this up so that this is good enough for us. You can take this and make it better or adjust it for your business so that it makes sense for your team and your communication.
Nehal, thank you so much for joining us today. This is really illuminating. You're crushing it. You're the man. Thank you so much. I hope to have you back on the show soon. Everybody here with us today, thank you for joining. We'll be here same time next week. The recording for this will be sent out briefly after this email, and we'll send you all of the documents that we just shared here today. And if you have any questions, of course, reach out to Nehal, tweet at us, send us, what you're seeing in your ad accounts. Tell us if you try this out and have it work for your company. Please let us know. We're all thrilled. And everybody, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for staying here over time with us. And we'll be seeing you all soon.